All right, welcome to the feedback section. This is the part where we interact with our community, and we are very thankful for every piece of feedback we get. So let's start with emails, David. Do we have anything?
We actually got a couple this week. One is from Puppy Love,
Okay.
and he says, I just got through listening to your roguelike games episode while I was at work, and I was practically tearing my hair out in frustration, trying to convince myself not to write you another pissy email. Okay, that's our goal with every episode is to cause baldness in our listeners. He says, roguelikes are among my favorite genres of games, and I feel like you completely misunderstood them. First off, let me make it clear before I ran at you that I actually enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed listening to you discuss your views on free will and compatibilism. I enjoyed the psychology research you explained, and I enjoyed your existential exchanges toward the end. This is the kind of content I tune in for, and I got plenty tonight, but you could not have interpreted roguelikes any less accurately than you did here.
Oh, thanks. It's awesome.
Yeah, so in the first two-thirds of the episode, Jeremiah struggled with so much difficulty to understand the appeal of the genre that he actually conjectured that its entire fan base might have obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Well, that's oversimplified, but okay, I see what you're saying.
And that playing the games was a way for them to indulge their repetitive urges. And he suggested that those people who play them may not really enjoy it, but instead are only fooling themselves into thinking they enjoy it in order to justify its purchase. I realize that the word gamer is broad. I realize that you could put 10 of us in a room and potentially none of us would agree on what a good game is, but damn, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was stunned at first when I listened to this, but then David jumped in and compared his experience playing roguelikes with the plight of Sisyphus, and it finally occurred to me that what it was you two were missing. You both were playing these games as though the goal was some distant point of completion. You compared them to the Diablo series and assumed that the permanent death mechanic was meant only to increase the challenge of the game or the prestige of its conqueror. You saw the death of the character as the loss of what you had accomplished so far rather than as its culmination.
Yeah.
Roguelikes are not played the same way as you would play Bioshock or Final Fantasy. You are not the audience of a carefully prepared storyline following the protagonist from one scripted chapter to the next in a series until you reach its final resolution. You're more like the mayor in SimCity. You're building and simulating an adventure, developing him, and managing his survival within a random environment. The plot you are uncovering is the story of your hero as he struggles against odds which will eventually overwhelm him, and your only goal is to build a fun and unique character. Just like every game of SimCity, you end by destroying your creation in a fantastic disaster. A good roguelike is one whose ending is so far distant that you are likely to never reach it. Instead, it should offer endless dungeons filled with new enemies, environmental hazards, and enough character customization to allow you to play it over and over again with different heroes. The randomization of treasure and traps should force you to adapt your character to each unique playthrough, so that every round is a different experience. The satisfaction of such a game is found in building the strongest hero you can manage within the environment you are given, and testing it against even greater obstacles until you find its limit. The best rounds always end in mayhem and carnage, with your character lying at the bottom of a massive pile of gore. In my opinion, if you reach the end of a roguelike and kill its boss, then the developers need to add more content. I find no
Wow.
joy in games which allow you to play and repeat the same challenge until you get the outcome you want. My favorites are those which force you to live with the consequences of your character, of your choices and failures, like Banner Saga or Wolf Among Us, both games I know you two have played and understand. During the episode, you quoted the Iliad, kind of,
Shut up.
and this was the moment when I think you came closest to understand the roguelike genre and what I love about it. To immerse yourself in the story of your character, you must share his perspective. So long as you can load and reload, face and reface the same challenges, you will never share in the sense of risk that your hero must feel, and you will never share in his victories. The roguelike is about building a unique hero and immersing yourself in his adventure. It is defined by inevitable failure and death, but it is about victory and survival. When your champion falls, it doesn't undo the progress you've made, it validates it. It shows you how much your creation was capable of, and that's the point. Its story begins with potential and ends with the summation of everything you discovered and saw, scoring you on what you're able to accomplish before something finally got the better of you. So that's it.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so yeah, sorry if sometimes I talk so quickly and I move from topic to topic and get caught up on tangents that I portray something other than what I have in my mind, the construct and the sort of conceptualization I have in my mind. So if I made it sound like you guys are all a bunch of OCD people, I'm sorry, I don't, and I don't believe in over pathologizing, I guess, people in general. So I
Right.
don't believe that you guys have problems or that anyone does. But that's a really good point. It's all about seeing your creation to fruition and eventually death that's like kind of a morbid part of reality that I hope everyone can get in contact with at some point in life. Sometimes it takes a funeral, but sometimes it sounds like it kind of just only takes a rogue, like, you know?
Yeah, that's what towards the end of that discussion when I was thinking about how Sisyphus is not a he's like a hero, like he's not a punishment, but he's finding joy in his work. Like I
Right.
think that's kind of what he's getting at is like it's not getting to the top of the mountain that's the point of the game. It's just like the like just seeing how far you can get and experiencing what he experiences and failing when he fails and dying when he dies and just being that invested in the character. Like there's not that kind of meta disconnect where you're like, oh, my character died, that's annoying, I'm going to reload. It's like, oh, my character died, a part of me died.
Yeah. And yeah, that's something that we referenced in this episode with David Sirlin is my desire to. I wish I could get everyone to focus less on content and more on process, and by that I mean like not what is going on, but instead how you're engaging it. And that's what ACT is all about. The specific kind of therapy I practice, and it's about this idea of it's based kind of on the ideas of Marcus Aurelius, or the just or Epictetus, where it's not that anything in and of itself in the world can ever upset you; it's your reaction to those things.
Are you talking
And
about Marcus Aurelius from the movie Gladiator or actually his writings?
actually his writings, which I
Okay.
actually adore. I used to read his writings like I would like when I was a believer in the Bible, because
I know, I
if you
got
guys,
you, one of your birthdays, I got you like a
yeah,
bound tome of Marcus Aurelius.
which
Like, you love
which
that stuff.
I've already got a sweet like leather-bound version of that, so that was completely stupid and worthless. So
Good, glad you enjoyed it.
so I used it for firewood, but no. Maybe I can read. I don't know. Actually, I read from that sometimes too, because it's anyway, whatever. Really good, but yeah, I mean that's kind of the point. It sounds like this commenter is saying is that it's about the process of it's not about the content. The content, the outcome is not so much important as it is how you're engaging the media.
Mm.
So that's a great point.
Yeah, that's
Puppy
exactly
love.
what we were asking for because we admittedly said we don't understand the point of of roguelikes, but we
Yeah.
understand there must be a point because people love them. So it was good to get some insight into why people love something because I feel like even knowing that the next time I play one going into it, like I'll be expecting different things and will change my experience.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, thank you for that feedback. That was great.
Well, we have another email from Adam, and he says, "Hey guys, my favorite fighting game has always been the Guilty Gear series. I've always admired the creativity of the characters and the rocking soundtrack. My favorite character has to be Rachel from the Blaze Blue series, or Blaz Blue, I don't know how it's
Yeah.
pronounced. So,
I don't know if it's there's a lot of streamers that do that show that series now, but he likes that series.
yeah, Rachel from that is his favorite character. He says he's always been amazed with the exciting style of play known as the rushdown or bulldogging. Oh yeah, we were talking about that with
Yeah.
David on the thing. This style suits characters who have a variety of quick strikes and defensive options that are used to mix up the opponent and typically have a high amount of execution and inputs needed. Rachel is one of the coolest mechanics I have seen in recent fighting games with her ability to control the wind. Sorry, that's an inside joke with
Yeah.
JT Eberhard. He always makes these weird psychic characters in D&D, and we'll just say like random things all the time. Like random tangent. There was like this house burning down in this D&D game we were playing, and we're running in to see if we can help. And then JT's character like stands in front of everyone, like, "Hey everyone, wait a minute!" And we all look at him, and we don't know who he is. Nobody knows who he is. He's just a mysterious guy. And then we're like, "What?" He's like, "I control the wind." Because I guess
The
that was
random
one of his
villager.
powers. And the villagers were like, "Okay, like what?" So I think he was
And then
trying
he
to
proceeds to
help,
hold up his hands and throws a big gust of wind, and that wind spreads the
And
fire because that's how
yeah.
fire works. And
Yes.
I was the DM at the time, and it was like JT that literally spreads the fire to the next house over, and he's like, "Oh,
I think he was trying to blow it out like a birthday
remember what I
candle.
said?
but-
Can I erase their minds?" I was like, "No, you're not like Professor Xavier here. You're a level 1 psychic warrior." No, it was pretty
great.
funny.
So whenever we're trying to be like overdone with our drama, we always say, "I control the wind," and expect people to know what that means. So anyway, Rachel can control the wind. Her character trait allows her to keep an opponent at bay and be forced to deal with her projectiles, or when up close and personal, she can use her wind meter to unleash a bunch of mix-ups that leave opponents in the corner for more shenanigans. Also, something about being able to finish combos with an ultimate move that summons a lightning bolt from the sky to deal that last bit of damage is super satisfying for some reason. Her normal attacks are hilarious and consist of bashing an opponent with her umbrella or twirling her dress into them. The final cherry on top is that developers chose to include the best counterattack I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. With a simple button press, Rachel can absorb a hit from button mashing opponents, and her cat helper turns into a chair that electrocutes them and leaves them wide open for a counterattack. All in all, this burst damage character is a blast to play and makes for some interesting matchups.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Rachel character.
It sounds very Japanese in its randomness, like a cat that turned into a chair. And
it's like Mr. Game & Watch when you play him, David.
Mr. Yeah, something kind of trolly about winning with Mr. Game & Watch. Ringing the little bell. Ringing the little, me.
Throwing bacon at me from across the friggin' room.
me. Have some bacon, me.
And the alarm goes off. So nice.
So he also includes some additional topics that might give us some brainstorming ideas for future podcast episodes, which are always welcome. Yeah. He suggests player choice versus the illusion of choice. Altruism in games. The rise of Twitch TV personalities and their impact on gaming culture. Yeah. Motivations behind different kinds of player tropes, such as completionists, dedicated support, DPS, competitive gamers. Yeah, we almost actually did an episode about that, like different kinds of motivations for playing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we could visit. Ageism in gaming.
Yeah.
Self-policing communities such as EVE Online and League of Legends. And gaming as a spectator instead of a player. And he says, cheers, Adam from New York.
Awesome. Yeah. Those are great suggestions. Those are always welcome.
Yeah, those are all going on our Google document right now of episode ideas.
Yeah, great ideas. Great. We love meta topics like that, like things that are a little more not myopic. Myopic would be like close-sighted, so it'd be what's the opposite of that? I actually don't know the word for that, but a little more pulled back and meta than that. So, very appreciated. But cool. By the way, David, notice that we've got a web page.
Hyperopic. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's absolutely.
It was going to bother me if we didn't figure it out. So.
Oh, okay. I'm glad we could, but it's absolutely not something we do or update. It's just an automatic thing we get with Libsyn, which is the podcast hosting program website. Yeah, website that we use. Yeah.
We should have a website that we actually pay attention to because that's an important thing for like if people want to Google us and find out how to listen.
Yeah. So, I'm sure our listeners who are very like a modern internet marketing savvy are probably screaming and also pulling out their hair, which by the way is called trichotillomania, and that's a real problem. You should
So if you're one of those listeners, email us and we will let you make our website for us because that's something that needs to happen, and none of us are good at that.
Or also trichotillomania. Should you suffer from that, please email us. I can get you some therapy. No, anyway, so one of them was we had some comments here that have been there for a little bit and we haven't talked about them. One was on.
Never knew they were there.
The oldest one, and I just wanted to reference this because it's old and it's one of my favorite episodes that we did was Castlevania. Remember doing that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Loved it. I'm a big Castlevania fan myself, so they just said, really enjoyed this, my first episode, especially the historical facts regarding vampires in 18th century France. Charlie Hunnam was promoting Pac Rim. Charlie Hunnam is in Sons of Anarchy. He's the main character, Jax, and he's also in Pacific Rim. He's the main character, and I don't remember his name on there. On the Nerds podcast back in July, he was promoting this. And they talked quite a bit about the historical Vlad, the Impaler. You might enjoy that discussion. Yeah. Downloading back episodes of your podcast now. Posted by Johnny.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler. That's where the Dracula myth, large part of it came from.
I think we referenced that at some point, hopefully. If not, definitely go look it up. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Second one was on our Gamer Girls. You remember that one?
Yes, another popular episode.
Yeah, and one that we hope to kind of revisit now with our more modern understanding. But this one's from Quentin Lambert. It says, I understand that this podcast has been published a long time ago, but I couldn't help but to react to one thing you mentioned. You are explaining how it's related to evolution, that men are better at aiming than women. I would argue that it's not as simple. I think your reasoning is sound only if you can prove that the gene responsible for aiming is on the Y chromosome. Okay. I agree that the pressure you mentioned have led to an increase in our performance, but it does not imply that there is a differentiation between male and female. Moreover, this should be nuanced by the fact that there may not be an aiming gene. It might just be that the pressure triggered an increase in global brain performance. On this subject, some studies suggest, Catherine Vidal's in particular, admittedly this is not a proper review, that the brain plasticity is such that differentiating between female and male brain could well be irrelevant. I haven't finished this episode yet, but it's great so far. Great show anyway, Quentin from France. Ah, vive la France.
Oui. Yeah, I mean, he's right in that a lot of gender differences are largely cultural, and because of how our brains can adapt on the fly, like we can kind of direct where the brains go in some ways,
Hmm.
and also redirect. So, like, my students right now in high school, they're doing these panels where they're supposed to debate, and the teacher's supposed to be the pugnacious panel where it's kind of like defending your thesis, where they're just out to destroy
Yeah,
you. And
yeah.
so the topic they were doing was about the selective service. In America, selective service means that when you're 18 and you're male, you have to sign up in case we ever do a draft, and if you're female, you don't.
Hmm.
And so they were saying that that was sexist in this day and age because now women can voluntarily go into combat situations if they want, and other militaries, use both. So why are we not?
True.
And so anyway, a lot of that was coming up from the pugnacious panel from the teachers saying like, well, women are not very good at combat because they have a natural nurturing instinct and they want to protect people. And what if we were in a situation where children could be put in danger? Like women wouldn't want to do that, and maybe men would be more
Mm.
okay with that. And I was like, wait, so men are cool with killing babies, but women aren't? So like there was a lot of this kind of outdated. I think people put a lot of stock into what is gender, like what is like inborn versus what is from the nature nurture argument.
Yeah, like a gender role society prescribes
Right.
versus a
Like
biological
they're
imperative.
nurturers, so they shouldn't have to be warriors,
Hmm.
kind of thinking. Which he's right. Like a lot of the plasticity of the brain means that we can kind of control that now, or at least push brains in a certain direction.
Yeah, brain plasticity is just about neuroplasticity. If you guys don't know what it is, go, I don't know, Wikipedia or something. I'm sure there's a page for it. But essentially, it's just how your neurons grow and like how that potentiates or can slow down actually processes in the brain. So basically, it just means like you can make yourself be the person you want to be, which is unsettling for people who are fatalistic, or that's just my personality, or kids will raise themselves, that kind of thing. It's all false. We know that now. But anyway, yeah, he's got a point. Or sorry, Quentin. I'm assuming it's a he. He's got a point in that he's saying that there's more within group different variance than there is between group, which is absolutely true. I totally agree with that. On the other hand, it's not gender differences aren't all linked to the Y chromosome. I understand that's a reasonable thought to have for a layperson, but that's not exactly how it works. There are a lot of different differences that happen that aren't just linked to the Y chromosome. For example, hormonal differences. We have different like levels of serotonin, for example, is one of our the chemicals in our brain that balances all the different other chemicals, and there's some evidence to suggest that works differently in our brain as well. There's a lot going on biologically. It's not just linked to the Y chromosome, so I'll just cut that short just to say that that's an oversimplistic way to look at it. There are gender differences, but are they good or bad? That's a whole separate question. Your morality versus what yours is natural and imperative are two separate issues. But good point. I mean, I actually made this argument in one of my classes in cognitive, and it was about the fact that we are evolutionary, obviously, pressed towards having this projectile dominance, or dominance sounds ridiculous. So projectile affinity, I guess. We're better at throwing things, and that would make sense if we did indeed come from hunter-gatherer society, which evidence suggests that we did. And so, if so, the males did a lot of hunting, or at least that's historically what we've found, through anthropology. And so it looks like that's the case. And if that's the case, then we would be highly selected for. In which case, yes, gender would be a reasonable way to delineate the difference between the two. Otherwise, I agree. Gender is not a great term or predictor in a lot of cases. Totally agree. I would high five you straight to the internet, but. Yeah, in this case, I do think it is a relevant or salient kind of predictor to discriminate between the two camps is gender. I think. No, hopefully, yes. Anyway, so the next one we have is let me see, League of Legends with JT and Mike Lynn. I think we lost David for now. Gonna see if I can get him back. But until then, I'll just read this one because it's somewhat lengthy. It says, great podcast you guys have here. It's rare to find people go deep into the business, psychology, and mechanics of game design. This League of Legends episode definitely hits home for me, as I have cited the same issue with the game, even though it's one of my preferred addictions. Specifically, I believe that there needs to be some major redesign to give more glory to the support roles and shift the focus away from kill-death ratios, KD ratios. This is an opportunity with many MOBAs, as they seem to operate under the same pretenses as popular FPS titles like Call of Duty. Using that same comparison, it's only natural that we see lots of lone wolf mentality and general lack of self-accountability. Dota 2 handles this a bit better by bringing more focus to the various roles while making them a lot more dynamic, rather. Lol. locks people into very specific roles, which can be tedious for even veteran players, and is certainly a barrier to entry for new players. Dota 2 also allows for players to feel more immense by providing more variety in terms of customization paths and rotation of roles in games. In that manner, any character in any role can carry a game and shift the tides of war, whereas in LoL, if your primary damage dealers, typically your ADC, jungler, and top laner, fall behind or lack teamwork, it's hard to win team battles. I reckon Blizzard will address these issues because they are masterful at making games more accessible to the masses. I have high hopes for Heroes of the Storm, but there are also other very viable alternatives to LoL, such as Smite and GOME, if they can fix the bugs. I'm not really sure what that means. Yeah. Overall, I see the MOBA space as a growing industry, along with TCGs, trading card games, or trading card games, simply because people are starting to see the depth and the strategic side. For the average player, it's easy to externalize failure and blame luck, poor teammates, or any number of factors. The reality is that there's more to MOBAs than the action elements, but that may be the initial or main draw for most. I believe Riot, who makes League of Legends, has to do more of what Dota 2 has done by making more characters available for free, making the game less of a grind. Too much commitment is necessary to find a character you like and learn how to counter your toughest rivals. LoL also lacks game modes and events to cater to more playstyles. The standard 5v5 is very intimidating and will surely scare away casual gamers. Yet, MOBAs could be great fun for everyone if they take away some of the unnecessary overcomplication and features that encourage more caustic behavior. Anyway, I'd love to join you guys sometimes to discuss this sort of thing. I've been involved with game design, beta testing, and business consulting for a long time, so the way you guys dissect games really engages me. Awesome work, guys. By the way, do you guys also delve into tabletop games? The common threads between tabletop and video games are intriguing, but it's also interesting how different the experiences can be. Let's chat soon. Yomar, which is YogiZilla. I think this person also left us a review. We highly appreciate it. Let's see if I can get David back on. Yeah. So thank you, Yomar. Yomari, we appreciate it. Finally, this is from Grant. It says, this is from episode 20, Games as Social Commentary. This one goes, I would like to share some of my thoughts on League of Legends, specifically in MOBAs generally. This is another League of Legends one. It's a little long, so if you guys aren't interested, just skip ahead. I think one of the strengths of LoL is the way that it captures some of the appealing aspects of a single-player game in a multiplayer environment. Although the opposing players are your real enemy, you spend the early part of your game or every game focused on killing creeps, harvesting resources, and upgrading your character. It's similar to an RTS game, but instead of upgrading a more nebulous base, you're upgrading your own character. As a result, the power progression is felt much more keenly because you are choosing a single character instead of an entire race with a large collection of units. The number of characters you have to choose from is greatly expanded. Here too, I think that picking a specific unit that appeals to you tends to give a somewhat greater connection to the events in the game. On the other hand, needing to know the capabilities of over 100 characters and dozens of items in order to play is a real burden for players, especially as they are introduced to the game. League of Legends requires an extreme breadth of knowledge from players, although not much depth, and this means that the difficulty curve has a huge cliff at the beginning that new players have to climb before they are seen as effective. That difficulty curve plateaus very quickly after you've grasped the basics. A corollary for that, the difficulty cliff, along with the unavoidable competitive nature of the game, means that new players tend to spend their early matches largely being raffle-stomped for hours and hours by total jerks. It can be an unpleasant initiation, but it's not entirely representative. But past that lies what I tend to consider the greatest flaw of the genre as a platform for competition. Let's talk about snowballing. This is the term used to describe the way the characters leverage their current power to harvest more resources, gold XP, and we talked about this on one of our episodes. So the rate of power gain generally depends on your current power, and this leads to a tendency for the players that are winning to win, or that are trying to win, or that are winning to win more. And we've talked about this quite a bit, so I'm going to skip over this next bit. But it says, but on the other hand, the implication of snowballing is that as one character or team rises in power, the opposing character or team is steadily denied more and more options. If you're being overpowered in lane, you have the choice between losing quickly by trying to fight your opponent and being killed, or losing slowly as you try to avoid a fight, but you have to give up some of the resources available in the lane in order to keep your distance from the enemy. As a player with a background in fighting games, I believe the ability of counterplay is what I find the most frustrating and off-putting about these games. Thanks for reading. Let me know if you have any questions. Grant. It's a good point. And our episode this time was on fighting games. So hopefully you find this interesting, and what a more appropriate time to read this. So that pretty much wraps up the feedback episode. Next episode is going to be another fighting game we find very interesting, which is called Super Smash Brothers. Please tune in. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool. Even if you don't play, I think it provides a cool opportunity to talk about engaging other characters in games in general. So we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. This is Jeremiah. David has fallen out somehow of the cast. So this is me signing off, and we'll see you next week.